May 18, 1926, Los Angeles. The most famous woman in America walks into the Pacific Ocean and disappears. 5 weeks later, she walks out of a Mexican desert, alive. What happened in between put her on every front page in the country, and a century later, it has never been solved. This is her story, told through the real newspapers of 1926 from the archives of the Library of Congress. Her name was Aimee Semple McPherson, Sister Aimee to millions. In 1923, she opened the Angelus Temple in Los Angeles, 5,300 seats, filled night after night. She ran her own radio station, held one of the first broadcast licenses ever granted to a woman, and staged the gospel like a Hollywood picture with costumes, sets, and stage lights. Movie stars came to watch. Then, on a warm Tuesday afternoon in May, she went for a swim at Ocean Park Beach. Her secretary looked up from the sand and Sister Aimee was gone. For weeks, nobody knew anything. Airplanes swept the coastline, divers combed the water off the pier, and the search itself turned deadly when one swimmer drowned looking for her body. The newspapers chased her ghost across the continent. This front page, the Key West Citizen, June 5th, announces, "Missing evangelist found through detective agency, located supposedly in Canada." She wasn't. A ransom letter arrived, signed by a group calling itself the Avengers. Her mother waved it away, and on June 20th, thousands gathered at the shoreline for a memorial service, wept and scattered flowers into the waves. Sister Aimee was dead. Everyone agreed. 3 days later, at 1 o'clock in the morning, a woman knocked on a door in Agua Prieta, Mexico, a border town in the Sonoran Desert, hundreds of miles from Los Angeles, and collapsed on the doorstep. By sunrise, it was on every wire in America. The Brownsville Herald, June 23rd, in letters nearly 2 inches tall. "Find Mrs. McPherson alive, long-sought evangelist staggers in. Was kidnapped, taken to Mexico and held for ransom. Mother overjoyed." The paper that broke the story to the world was the Douglas Daily Dispatch, the small-town daily of the border town where she now lay in a hospital bed. For 36 days she had been missing, it reminded its readers. No one knew where, and the story Sister Aimee told from her pillow was astonishing. She said a young couple had lured her from the beach, begging her to pray over their dying baby, that at the car a cloth was pressed over her face, that she woke in a shack held by 3 captors, a woman called Rose, a man called Steve, a Mexican man called Felipe who demanded $500,000 from her church, that Steve burned her fingers with his cigar, and that when they left her alone one afternoon, she sawed through her bonds on the jagged lid of a tin can, climbed out of a window and walked some 13 hours across the desert, over mountains, through the June heat to that door in Agua Prieta. It was a miracle, except almost immediately the details began to itch. She had walked, by her own account, 13 hours through one of the hottest deserts on Earth, but arrived with no sunburn and barely even asking for water. Her shoes carried grass stains. Grass in a desert, but almost nowhere. Her dress was neither torn nor stained with sweat. And on her wrist was a watch her mother had given her. A watch she had not been wearing when she walked into the sea. Searchers rode out with trackers and telegrams. The shack was never found. Neither was Rose. Neither was Steve. 100 years ago, in the summer of 1926, the case detonated. The Douglas Daily Dispatch, July 7th, LA Grand Jury summons Douglasites. The mayor of Douglas, the chief of police, the nurse who had treated her, all of them summoned to Los Angeles to testify. Rewards were stacked for the kidnappers. $10,000 from a newspaper, $5,000 more from her own temple. The money was never claimed, because the grand jury was no longer just hunting kidnappers. It was beginning to wonder whether there had been a kidnapping at all. The doubt had a name and an address: Carmel by the Sea, a resort town some 350 miles north of Los Angeles. Witnesses there swore that during the very weeks America was dragging the ocean for her body, they had seen a woman just like Aimee, living quietly in a rented seaside cottage, and not alone. With her, they said, was Kenneth Ormiston, the radio engineer of her own Angelus Temple, a married man. A man who had resigned and vanished at almost exactly the same time she did. By September, the district attorney had heard enough. Aimee Semple McPherson, her mother, and Ormiston were charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy to manufacture evidence. If convicted, she faced years in prison. The Washington Daily News, September 16th. Aimee's followers pray all night as her arrest nears. 1,000 of the faithful knelt in the Angelus Temple through the small hours, while the preliminary hearing became one of the longest, loudest court spectacles Los Angeles had ever staged. And Sister Aimee never wavered. Through months of testimony, not one detail of her story changed. Not one. The shack. Rose. Steve. The tin can. Word for word, under oath. The newspapers printed every syllable. In 1926, there was no bigger story in America. Radio preachers denounced her. Her congregation only grew. And H.L. Mencken, the most cynical columnist in the country, came to mock her and left half defending her. Through the winter, the case ground on. The Milwaukee Leader, December 15th, K.G. Ormiston, case up today. The missing engineer had finally surfaced and been hauled into court. And then, in January 1927, it all simply collapsed. The district attorney stood up and dropped every charge, against everyone. No trial, no verdict, no explanation that satisfied anybody. 2 years later, that same district attorney went to San Quentin prison himself for taking bribes in another case, which did not exactly quiet the conspiracy theories. Aimee went back to her pulpit and stayed there for 18 more years. She preached through the Depression, fed tens of thousands of the hungry in Los Angeles, and died in 1944 from an accidental overdose of sleeping pills. The church she founded counts its members in the millions today. And the 36 days. Kidnapping, exactly as she described. A hidden month with a married man, or something else entirely that nobody has guessed yet. No confession ever came, no shack was ever found. A century on, the desert has kept her secret. So, what do you think happened in those 36 days? The comments are open. This has been the Century Desk. Every week we open the newspapers from exactly 100 years ago. The next edition is already on the desk, August 1926. A 19-year-old girl steps into the English Channel and swims into history. Subscribe so you don't miss her.